good morning from my side. My name is Stefan Henkel, and I have the pleasure to present some activities we are doing on behalf of the European University Viadrina, situated in Frankfurt-Oder on the other side of the river, but at the same time also here in this building. The Collegium Polonicum, where we are at the moment, is a common project actually of the Adam Mickiewicz University in Poznan and the Viadrina University from Frankfurt-Oder. We are quite privileged as being from academia and doing not only academic things. We are situated at the international office, and thanks to the fact that we have to fund the projects we're doing ourselves, so we're always looking for external funding. We also have the freedom, or we can preserve the freedom actually to come up with ideas we want to do within the frameworks of academic, but also beyond that formats. And that gives us the chance actually to reach out to actors that are not from the academic field, to work together with the city, to be interested in communication between different kinds of knowledges. And Kirill and me will give you a short introduction on our practices. We will skip the part of the university history. I think it's better in this context here. So every year, it's like the Summer School Viadrinicum is one of the projects we are doing. It's already this year, it was the 8th edition. For 2 weeks, we are inviting scholars, activists, and also artists to come to Frankfurt-Oder and to explore together with their different backgrounds, questions of borders, peace building, the post-socialist urbanism, migration or digitalization, that were the topics of the last years. So we can pick every year a new topic and bring together people that are working on that from different perspectives. So the participants is approximately 30 persons, mainly MA and PhD students, but also young researchers, activists, artists, and practitioners. And we see it as a really fruitful combination, because generally we are often stuck to our bubbles. Yeah, so we are communicating rather with scholars when we are from academia or like with NGO activists. But to come out of their own bubble is super helpful to gain new perspectives, and maybe also to develop cross-sectoral common projects where common learning spaces can be created. So we have on the one side lectures and seminars, like more classical approaches, but also workshops and laboratories. And by laboratories we mean that the participants can work on their own projects for 2 weeks, either shooting a documentary movie here in Frankfurt-Oder, or working on artistic interventions, as we did this year. And one of the results, or 2 of the results actually, we can show you in a sec. And one important aspect is also the cooperation with non-academic partners here in Frankfurt-Oder. So we are working together already for the last 3 years with the Museum for Modern, Brandenburg State Museum for Modern Art, where we can use the premises for workshops, and also use the museum as an exhibition space for the results of the school. So it's for us really of importance that what we are doing during the 2 weeks, it can be presented again to the city public. Yeah, so that the knowledge that is created, and generally is including, of course, the local context here, and gives the privilege actually to have a perspective on Frankfurt-Oder with non-Frankfurt-Odian eyes, is really really nice also to see for the locals, so to say. Yeah, and also like we are working together with research institutions, and for example the Goethe Institute Kiev, where we're in strong cooperation with. Here you see an image directly from a workshop at the Brandenburg State Museum. As you see, in the background there are bubbles with terms and thoughts, and that's the way also like more non-hierarchical order of a school, how we are imagining it. Here you see, you can recognize maybe one person. It's always a pleasure to include as well, because like shifting borders in thinking with the help of the constructions of realities. In this case, Swoopfoot is of course also for the participants always a nice new view, and generally the perception as a border between Germany and Poland that can be crossed every day. Generally, the people are living in Słubice in the same dormitory we are living in as well, and cross the border daily twice. Yeah, so because we are generally on the German side with the courses. Maybe I will give you a short film now, one example of what people were doing, and we thought we'd take something from the Border Lab.
The politics of we. In the beginning, there were two legs, carrying in them the concept of steps, walking to move through the cities and towns. Steps are to cover the distance around. I'll tell you the story of a guy who once told, the idea of first step is about not moving at all. Hello, my name is Bogdan. I live in dormitory and every day I am crossing the borders.
Exist, do not exist.
Crossing the borders.
Exist, do not exist.
Crossing the borders. Crossing the border.
You can see borders, it's a completely different world.
People were coming and we started bringing our perspectives in this neighborhood. Mostly, I was thinking of my trip from Minsk to Vilnius when I spent 9 hours at the border. But here I went to Germany and back 6 times during only Sunday. Suddenly, borders appeared not to be an oppressive word.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are now here in the border town of Frankfurt-Oder and Słubice, and I think that we will now cross the border. So, crossing the border, we are now crossing the border, and right now we have just crossed it.
It is just appearing in the city.
Crossing the border.
Though pretty much I felt myself in between, 2 cities together, but also apart. Here is 2 countries, just for 1 town. Berlin Wall moved from Berlin and appeared on Oder. I felt myself a scooter in the fontaine, nor able to move, nor willing to see. I used here my own river of beer to get to the obvious in these conditions idea. I decided to visit a psychologist and have a revitalizing dialogue.
Hello. Do you have tobacco?
He listened to me and he at once offered to meet Frankfurt and Słubice directly. And here I was, gently following the blue bunny, stepping quietly after him to know the place where I can meet Frankfurt and Słubice and to know how are they doing. Mostly we were having a pleasant conversation, but it was getting more and more tense. Frankfurt started accusing Słubice of empty evening streets. All of them go to that side, he was shouting. Słubice was also offended for long. She was like, we used to have a tram between us. The hardest fights were about the pizza. Frankfurt was saying that Domino's is totally legit, while Slubica said that it was incomparable to Sopranos. Some distance appeared in their relations. Frankfurt was choosing the evenings with friends. Slubica was attending roof parties, but no one was happy in the end. It made me feel that Frankfurt and Slubica in some kind of river relations, when it's smooth on the surface, but a lot of problems with crossing the borders.
Retake. Crossing the border. Crossing the border.
So now, please, I want your hands on your hips and throw a ball. Throw a ball. Go see Clother. No, stop, don't go. Stop. No, stop. Once I have noticed the tower, it became appearing everywhere. I was hiding, but I could not hide. It was attacking me again and again. In the end I realized it's again the problem of crossing the borders.
You know, friends, crossing the border.
Crossing the borders. I offered them the idea I've met the day before. I offered them to visit Sloopford, the land of free people, the blessed metropole. Sloopford is a place of legends and glory. It unites cities, peoples, ideas, language, newspapers, physical activities, the parliament making the wisest decisions, and last but not least, it makes living easier.
This will be like paradise where they go.
Frankfurt was not so sure about this idea, but Slubica convinced him to come. Who could stand this Sloopford magic? Obviously, it worked for them.
Making out of we and the other a common we.
It changed something forever in crossing the border.
You know, friends, crossing the border. Crossing the border. Crossing the border. Border. Crossing the border.
Crossing the borders.
Oh Lord.
Later that day, I found myself in a different mood. I was overwhelmed with all these borderlines. I've been overcoming different barriers all my life, and now I see people who did overcome these barriers and do not know what to do with it. I felt I'd better follow the wisest advice of many I've read.
All right, so my name is Kirill, I'm a colleague of Stefan, and now we're going to have the second part of this presentation. As you might have seen, the experience of crossing the borders for our participants is always, I guess, the most interesting. Regardless of what topic we have for the summer school, somehow this issue attracts the most of attention, because I guess it's the most the most relevant thing that the people go through when they come here, especially comparing their own experience of crossing the borders elsewhere. For instance, coming from Ukraine to the EU or from Belarus to the EU, which is even more complicated. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to portray the larger framework which we kind of try to work with or define for ourselves. And we have spared you the historical part, but we wouldn't be ourselves coming from a university if we didn't offer you a more analytical approach now. So, coming from the academia, we think about our projects as attempts of permeating the boundaries between the university and the outer environment. If we want to wrap it up in a more analytical approach, then one could say that university traditionally is charged with three main missions. I mean, the order of them is still questionable, but here we have teaching as the first one. So the university invites people to acquire certain kind of knowledge and skills. Then researching, kind of bringing society further and further to some, I don't know, good future by means of developing knowledge about society and the environment around us. And then the third one, which is still quite new, I think, it's the contribution of society, the contribution of university to society, or sometimes also known, especially in the Western academia, as public engagement. And I guess this third option, or third mission, is the one that interests us the most, because none of us consider himself as a teacher or a researcher, but at the same time, talking about this third mission, we also always kind of try to subversively integrate the teaching and research into this practice as well. So summer school is one of those formats which we're working with, and I think it's also a very kind of malleable and flexible format which allows to experiment a lot with different elements. And what perhaps makes this summer school Viadrinicum here, well, not unique but special, are these, well, arbitrarily defined three main categories that we kind of try to juggle with, and I'm not sure if these terms even exist, but they exist in our vocabulary. So the first one is transsectoriality, or sometimes it's also called cross-sectoriality. The idea is that we, coming again from the academia, don't want to stay in this rather sterile academic context, but think that it's always of profit for both sides, the university and the others, to exchange on their views and their experience, and to develop a certain kind of ecology of knowledge, a different kind of ecology of knowledge, which is not submitting to this rigid academic approach where you have the strict rules that you have to abide in order to claim that the things that you're saying are knowledge. This brings me to the second point, which is like this epistemic diversity, because I think this is, I don't know, for us, I guess it started as a more of an intuitive approach when it happened so that we had a very heterogeneous group of participants and realized how interesting and how fruitful it is to see people sharing different perspectives and experimenting and trying out different optics that they have. So to overcome the limitations of their own professional activities, for instance, when you're a practitioner and you're working in a particular field, I guess with time, as Stefan was talking about the bubbles, you're consumed by this bubble to an extent that it becomes, on the one hand, really boring for you, but at the same time, it becomes an automatic model of perception. And coming to the summer school, you always have the chance of encountering people who would be telling you, well, you can look at things differently. And we perceive the summer school as a laboratory where this exchange of different lenses, different optics can take place, and also where people can try out new things. If we go, again, to this meta level, then we can perceive summer school also as an attempt to extend the learning space from within the academia to the outer world. This means both literally exploring the public space of the city and also adopting kind of a different approach, what also concerns the hierarchy of knowledges. This has been the perspective of someone coming from the academia, but then for us, I guess, with time, it also became clear that if we want to work with the larger audience, not only the people who are kind of interested in a particular topic and have experience of dealing with it, but also of engaging larger public, it requires a view from the outside, from outside of academia. And the concept that we encountered that, at least for now, seems to be quite interesting for us, is the concept of learning cities. So as we discovered, starting from, I think even it started even earlier, but formally starting from 2013, UNESCO has Learning Cities Network, which adopted this Beijing Declaration, The main idea of which is that in conditions of really rapidly accelerating social transformation, political transformation, cultural transformation, society requires institutions or institutional basis that would allow people from all walks of life to have access to education. And so it's kind of harks back to the idea of lifelong education, or sometimes we're joking, maybe it's a long life education. Now I came up with this love-long education. Anyway, the idea is that cities become an infrastructure, as in one of the articles it was also defined. City becomes a material, discursive, and affective infrastructure for educating, or for providing people with opportunities for lifelong education, so that there's always a chance for people to explore something new, to adopt new skills. But also what is important for us, at least in our kind of approach, is that this might potentially allow people to develop their own social, or not their own, but to constantly redevelop social imagination, something that I guess relates really closely to the idea of reality construction. And as you might see here in this quite long quote, it's also about empowerment, so providing the people with the skills and also the opportunities of claiming their lives and claiming the right to design it the way they see fit. Jumping back to the ground, so to say, this year it happened so that initially we were planning to have part of the school take place in Ukraine, which for obvious reasons became impossible in the beginning of the year. And somehow it turned out that we managed to supply the 2 weeks of the school that we usually have at the end of August with another part which started in the first half of August, which we called urban intervention. So subconsciously, I guess, we created for ourselves the opportunity to really go out and explore the public space, which is located quite close to the bridge. So if you proceed from the Sloop district of Sloopfurt now to the Furt district of Sloopfurt, once you cross the bridge, it's going to be to the left of you, and you can still see the remains of this structure that we built with the help of scaffolding materials there. Some people call it kind of an exhibition of underwear, which is being dried out. Some people, define it differently. Some people define that as a symbol of peace. In the summer, when it was really hot, a lot of people were associating those kind of pieces of textile material hanging on the ropes with the clouds, which were not there in the sky. Anyway, the idea was that we take that spot, which actually was initiated as a Brückenplatz 1.0, so the bridge square, which now moved to the place that we visited a couple of days ago. And this place where this, as Michael was saying, this invisible huge mall was built, or depending on which reality you exist in, never managed to get built. This place has stood like this for quite a while. And this year, when a lot of displaced shopping mall, the invisible one, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's not everybody has access to that reality. I guess it's exclusive one. This year, after the escalation, after Russia's aggression against Ukraine, a lot of people from Ukraine started coming to Frankfurt Oder, and Frankfurt Oder became one of the main gates for them into Germany. And I don't know the exact statistics, but somewhere, I think beginning of summer, the city of Frankfurt, which has like 60,000 inhabitants, received, at least according to official statistics, up to 1,000. I guess in reality there are more than that. And the people were put into different, well, they received different accommodation in different parts of the city. And what you see here also on one of these flyers is exactly that corner of that building that stands there when you cross the bridge. And it's also social housing, and as far as I understand, it was kind of to a significant extent, it was standing empty before the war, and now there are several Ukrainian families living there. And our idea was that we try to go out there and create a space where people can come together and exchange, work together. And the main activity that we proposed was creation of street furniture. So we invited a collective, they call themselves Collective Plus X from Leipzig, who have ample experience with these participatory projects, and they helped us to first construct this the structure of scaffolding, and then for 2 weeks we were building street furniture. In certain respects it didn't work out, in certain respects it worked out better than we thought, in certain respects it worked out differently than we planned it to be. But anyway, there were people that served as a point of assembling kind of a certain public. So there were Ukrainians coming by, there were also locals who were looking for socialization, especially after several years of the pandemic. And yeah, our idea was quite open. We were simply having chats with the people, building stuff together, and also cooking together and having common dinners. And from our perspective, throughout these several weeks, we managed to develop, if not the community, then a certain space that could be claimed by the people. And then after the 2 weeks of this urban intervention, we had the summer school, in the frame of which the participants were also developing that space further. As Stefan was describing, we have these 3 labs where the participants can develop their own projects, and they were, of course, picking up on this initial idea of engaging the publics. And as you might see here, we're also having film screenings, we're making some music, and now I guess I would show you a small video from, like a very short one, from one of the labs. Yeah. Where the participants of the so-called Makers Lab developed, as they call it, memory swing, which was put on the wheels and could be pushed through one side, from one side of Sulfurt to another. Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah. So here you have it as Erinnerungshustavka, which is Erinnerung is like a memory in German, and Hustavka in a swing in Polish, but it's also written with a spelling mistake, so kind of a very authentic thing. so the idea of this memory swing was that everybody was invited to sit down and reflect about their experience of living in the city. I think the original idea was to reflect about the experience of displacement. But yeah, in the end, it was too short a period of time to look for the people outside of the city, and then it was created as a part of Makers Lab, which means that the participants were building it together and they designed it together, and this swing was also woven from the remains of the plastic rubbish that we managed to accumulate throughout these 2 weeks. So yeah, the final kind of attempt to make a conclusion about this all, also kind of transcending, I guess, what we work with here in the local context. I would say that for us in this work, and I don't know, this is maybe something that doesn't have the concrete, direct relation to the context of twin cities and border towns in general, but I think if we combine that together, then it becomes even more relevant. So for us, what is really interesting, again, coming from the academic context, is to bring different kinds of knowledge together. So develop this ecology of different knowledges where there's ideally a non-hierarchical way of exchange, or maybe at least we can somehow tame this hierarchy of rational knowledge production, and democratize this space of exchange so that there is no higher threshold to have access to this platform. It's also about developing public learning infrastructures, so as to kind of again make it quite easy for ordinary people to join this process and to kind of become part of a larger community. So it's about assembling local and trans-local publics. Like I'm really happy that now, as representatives of European University Viadrina, we have this chance of cooperating with Nova America Universitet, kind of making it transcontinental cooperation. But at the end of the day, what it's all about, from my perspective, is about nurturing social imagination. So how do we perceive city as a laboratory for living? Yeah, not only for learning, but a laboratory of common living where we can practice the values that we share together, practices of care, for instance, and cooperation. That would be it, I guess. And as Stefan mentioned, this is just one of the projects, and I guess talking about the other ones would have, stretched your commitment of attention too much. But you can always approach us and ask questions. So thank you for your attention. And thank you for the invitation, because this is also, as I'm saying, the first part that we're officially the guests at Nova America Universitet. So yeah, it was a pleasure, and is a pleasure still.